We have a vision to be an international university of choice, anchored in Africa, dynamically shaping the future. Our mission is to inspire our community to transform and serve humanity through innovation and the collaborative pursuit of knowledge. To fully embrace the digital universe which we are beginning to inhabit, this is what we do at the University of Johannesburg. UJ, where the whole is far greater than the sum of its parts.
This next session is on digital scholarship and open access. And the first of our speakers is Dr. Bud Hall, and he is from the University of Victoria and is a co-chair in a UNESCO in the community-based research and social responsibilities in higher education. Bud and Louise, I have said earlier that I'm not going to give lengthy bios of the different speakers. These are available for everybody on our website and also on our wonderful conference app, which has been sponsored by Ex Libris. So, Bud, it is over to you, speaking about open science for communities beyond open access.
So let me thank you very much, the University of Johannesburg, and particularly your extraordinary, library and the organizers for including me, in these couple of days of really stimulating conversations about knowledge and the digital world and so forth. So it's our tradition in the west coast of British Columbia, where I live on Vancouver Island, to always acknowledge the traditional territories which we share, and I'm speaking from the Lekwungen speaking people's traditional territory, but I'm also giving acknowledging the with thanks the original peoples of this part of Africa and the various people whose knowledges have been excluded over the years. So I'm talking today about the UNESCO recommendation on open science. Some of you will have heard about that. Some of you, perhaps, this is the first time. UNESCO is in November of 2021 will be approving what they call a recommendation on open science. A recommendation is a normative statement that will be approved by 196 countries on various topics within their realm of expertise. Open science, as many of you will know, you'll all be familiar with that concept, has a lot of elements to it. I am speaking today about about a brief which has been put together by the Canadian Commission for UNESCO and the UNESCO Chair in Community-Based Research, which is a contribution to the UNESCO recommendation consultation process. And you can see this presentation is a product of Florence Piron in Laval, Leslie Chan in Toronto, Rajesh Tandon in India, Wanotsa, Lorna Williams, an Indigenous scholar, and myself. So what the consultation is about open science, and UNESCO is asking us to think about and to talk about open science, the question of open to what? Open to what? And is it open to citizens everywhere, to their contribution to science? Is it open to making scientific articles and data available? Is it open to excluded knowledges? What is it that we're talking about when we talk about open science, and what do we want to see in a recommendation? COVID, all of you will be aware of the quite extraordinary sharing that has been happening within the scientific world because of COVID, and it is the COVID experience, the knowledge experience. During the COVID period has challenged many of our conventional research practices. So we've had, public debates, much more public debates on some of the critical issues. We are seeing the creation of hybrid knowledge spaces, knowledge-making structures, citizen science, what people call maker spaces. We've seen an openness to looking at impact on the public, on public welfare, not just the economy. And we've seen an openness to research partnerships between civil society, academics, social movements that we haven't seen, before. And we are seeing, and I would argue that, this conference being based in South Africa makes a good case for openness to knowledge from the global South, and we would say to excluded communities in the global North. So what we are suggesting is that when we think about openness, open science, we are thinking of three things. We are thinking of openness to publications and data, and now this is something that all of you will know a great deal about. And many people associate the concept of open science to simply being the question of, which is not so simple, but focusing on the question of openness to knowledge and data. But we are suggesting that when we think of open science, we need to think about openness to communities, and also to openness to excluded knowledge. And I'll come back to that in a little bit. So when we talk about, why do people talk about openness to publications and data? Well, this is a group that knows this intimately, but there's various reasons given for that. One is to democratize knowledge, to make it more accessible. Another is to provide access to the global scientific conversations that are going on, and another is to contribute to a universal scientific legacy. There are all kinds of reasons, very powerful, very important reasons why openness to publications and data is something that is moving forward in quite a variety of ways. But we also need to think about open science in the context of openness to society, because the 21st because historically, scholarly communities over the years, in order to protect their, themselves and to protect themselves from control from the outside, they've closed themselves off, more and more. And so, the idea of the ivory tower, we're trying to tear down those ivory towers, but there is a tradition in academia which has said that that the further away from reality that we are, the better. But we are seeing in the particularly this century, many new forms of openness, of understanding, respecting knowledge creation that happens in all parts of society. And so you have structures such as the science shops, which are a European kind of innovation. You've got concepts such as responsible research and innovation, which links academics, with community-based scholars. You've got a whole variety of local, national, and global networks that are supporting an openness to and a respect for the knowledge creating spaces outside of academia. Now, there's a word which some of you will have heard, but others won't. The word is epistemicide. Epistemicide is we know of words like homicide and suicide and linguicide. Epistemicide is a historic process where where European knowledge systems have spread around the world to the exclusion of other knowledge systems. So, many of you are, living and working in South Africa. You know about African epistemologies, African ways of thinking. We in North America, we also know about how the indigenous knowledges of the first peoples in this continent were replaced by the knowledge systems of European settlers, colonial settlers, such as myself and my ancestors. When we talk about openness to excluded knowledge systems, we're talking about openness to things like indigenous epistemologies. We're talking about openness to knowledge which is coming from women, from racialized groups, from the differently abled, to non-Anglophone. Here I am speaking in English. Most of the world speaks something else. And we're talking about knowledge created by poverty and working class communities. And the slogan, which is attributed to Boaventura de Santos Sousa, Portuguese sociologist, is that there will be no global justice without epistemic justice. So there are in the in the brief, which Elaine Laberge, who's been working with me, and by the way, who designed this very attractive PowerPoint, Elaine Laberge has shared the link to the full brief, which I think many of you would find quite fascinating. There are a number of, we've got, I think, 16 or 17, but let me just talk about a few of these considerations. These are considerations which we are putting forward to UNESCO, and which we would invite any of you to think about, and if you think that they are interesting, to get engaged in the consultation process yourself. So we think that we need to have support systems for the co-construction of knowledge with communities. We talk about working in hand with communities, but there are big power differences. Academics are paid to do research, community people aren't. So we need to think about the kind of support structures which will help us to form, really more equitable knowledge creating and sharing partnerships. I would like to suggest that that you make the PowerPoint available to anybody who's interested, because the links are there. And what we are asking for is, if you think that the content around the issues that are being raised around the open science discussion are of interest, and we suggest that you get involved yourselves in the UNESCO consultation process, and we've provided links to that. And we'd also suggest that you contact your national commission in South Africa, or if you're in other parts of the world, to let people know that you're very interested, in the question of the open science recommendation. And as I said before, we've provided you both in the PowerPoint and in the chat with the link to the full brief, UNESCO brief. And I'm grateful for having had the opportunity, and I look forward, if anybody is interested, they could contact me.
But Bud, what you have been talking about, and Louise has been talking about, but from a very different angle, has been the importance of the research, thinking, ideas that have so often not made it onto the international platform. In South Africa, obviously, we are very involved in the decolonializing project and really trying to understand the knowledge and excluded knowledge of people that have been the peoples of Southern Africa. for thousands of years. And so I think there are many people that are listening to this conference that will be particularly interested in joining you, Bud, and in the work that you are doing, because many of us are really trying to find ways in which to connect with communities and create an openness for communities to engage with knowledge, which is something that open access allows, but also to give a voice to those different types of information. Right. And knowledge that is within those communities. And so Bud and Louise, your work from very different angles is looking at this broader question, which is something that is of great concern to us here in South Africa.
Thank you so much, and lovely to hear your presentation, Louise, as well. I was particularly, interested, and I knew that you've done so much work at your university, but also in South Africa, and I know that Hong Kong is also, with the very lengthy history of knowledge which predates kind of Western knowledge. These ideas of of including, of drawing from the full range of knowledge systems is so important. So thank you very much, and as I said, happy to be in touch with anybody.
Right, so it's over to some questions, and Louise, the first question that has come up in the chat has been, how did you connect with different faculty members and members of departments and get them engaged? Because I think most of us listening to your presentation were quite bowled over by the connection that you've made with researchers and faculty.
It's time consuming and lengthy, and it was very much the librarians going out, and it was about building up the librarians' confidence that they had something that they could offer. And then it was lots of lunch meetings, coffee, let's show you a little bit of what we can do. We started with this advisory board, and I think that was really helpful because we really threw the question open to them to say, is this something that the library should be doing? Does this fit with Chinese U? And it was, they were our champions. I mean, we have really good faculty liaison librarians who link with our faculty anyhow, but it really does take time, and doesn't happen quickly. And it's really just about keeping going and persevering. Yeah.
Mm. Yes, I thought that was very interesting how you had shared with us that this has been a long-term project. It's not something that happened overnight. And we are very much at early stages of trying to do something similar at UJ. And I think it's very heartening to hear that it's a long-term process, and that we need to stick with it.
Stick with it. It really is. Yeah. I mean, and I listening to Bud, it really resonated with me because, we look at our collections, and, one of the heaviest used rare book collections that's been digitized is our Chinese medicine collection. And it's all those kinds of material that are very local and very, important to preserve and make accessible. And then get academics working in this area as well, to give them that platform to do this digital scholarship work is critical, I think, to libraries as research partners in the future.
But there's a question that's come up for you. You were talking about communities and making information available to communities and hearing from communities. Could you tell us a bit more of how communities have responded to this?
So if I can give an example of our Taoist collection, yeah, we had a collection of Taoist material, and we weren't actually really aware of how valuable and important this was until we had an academic come to us and say, hey, do you know that you have this collection? I'd really like to work on it. Can we digitize it? And so we worked with him and made it openly available. We then had an exhibition, and I think almost every single Taoist leader from a Taoist temple in Hong Kong came to this exhibition opening, and it really built connections. So it also helps us grow the collections. The physical unique items that are still critical for digitization. To get those into the library, to preserve those. If you've got the right collection, it will spark that interest from the community. That's our experience, yeah.
Bud and Louise, thank you both so much for wonderful presentations. As I say, we will be making your slides available, if you'll allow us, to everybody who's participated. And I'm sure that we will be knocking on both your doors to ask for more advice and help to implement the ideas that you've been sharing with us. So thank you both so much for your time.
The University of Johannesburg, the future reimagined.